We're going to watch the movie Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Did anybody see Paul Blart Mall Cop 1?
Nope.
No.
No.
In fact, I watched the first 10 minutes and turned it off.
It's got to be the dose. It's got to be the sequel.
At the start of this podcast, one of you asked whether or not we were sure we wanted to bite off a lifelong commitment. I gotta tell you, there's plenty of room in my stomach, and this meal looks tiny, motherfuckers.
Yeah, I mean, right after the sort of corporate logos appear, I think there's 2 or 3, and then it cuts to black, and then right as sort of the drums start, as it's playing this sort of fanfare, as we start to see the very tight close-up zooms on the badge as the logo starts to appear. As soon as you hear those drums, that's when I hit play.
The opening 4 minutes of this film are potentially the most tragic,
horrific.
Is it not
I've
the
ever
most
seen.
savage? Okay, so Paul Blart is a mall cop. He has a daughter, and he has a wife, and he has a mother.
The wife in the beginning, right? She leaves him after 6 days.
Jayma Mays, who played his wife, couldn't do the movie because she was filming Glee at the time.
Oh my God.
So she was written out of the movie, and that is what happened with that.
His wife left him because of uncontrollable vomiting. Like, they end the movie in love. They end the movie. Like, she wasn't tied to him because of, I assume, at least what we see in the flashback clip, is they end getting married and happy. And then after 6 days, after marrying him, her cause for leaving him is uncontrollable vomiting.
She can't not vomit. Think about that. Think about that. Actually visualize that for a second. How miserable that is.
Yeah.
He saves a little boy, and there's about 3 minutes of goading from the mom trying to get the boy to hug Paul Blart. And it takes longer than it should, and they spend more time on it, really, than they should, which is great.
I
and then the boy
misremember this.
slaps him instead of hugging him.
Kevin James gets slapped in the face by a little kid.
He's like, my wife left me, but at least I got my mom's.
She's like talking to an adorable little puppy or something.
Then his mother gets hit by a milk truck.
There's a shadowy figure pulling the strings.
God is putting the Shadow Man in charge of ruining Paul Blart's life, and that is a test on Shadow Man. But we don't discover this until Paul Blart 5.
The Shadow Man, of course, being the dark, nefarious person or people, community of people, organization that is trying to ruin Paul Blart Mall Cop's life for some reason. It is probably the fastest death mourning sequence of any movie I've ever seen, where mom gets hit by a milk truck. We get 4.5 seconds of Paul Blart looking sad on a couch.
So Paul Blart gets invited to a security officers trade association conference.
They're married for 6 days. She had already changed her last name to Blart. It says Amy Blart on the letter that sent him.
This film lasts 4 minutes and 30 seconds before they're like, we promised Vegas. Here is Vegas.
It's opening up and giving you some establishing Vegas shots, and it's playing that, this is gonna be the best day of my...
We're in Vegas now. Vegas, baby.
Paul Blart is obsessed with the idea that his daughter be secure. He gives her road flares to keep with her and an extra cell phone battery, tracks her movements constantly.
He does care about his daughter, right? He cares about her so much he can't handle the idea of her leaving him and going to UCLA. Against probably his own best interest as a parent, he cannot stomach that idea. Such is his love and fear of her leaving.
She's saying he should come to L.A. Say, yeah, if I want some smog on my earthquake flakes.
But there is a bit where he's checking at the hotel, and holy Christ, did that scene need to be 14 fucking minutes long?
There are actually 2 portrayals of women who are, I think, larger than the typical actress that you see in a film like this, with his daughter and the other officer, Donna, who are, like I said, larger than the typical actress, but are not in any, or at any moment is that played for laughs.
He shows up in the hotel. He's got a shirt that just looks like an aquarium, and it's too much.
Lane is working, and he checks in to the hotel with Paul Blart. He offers to carry his bags. Paul Blart refuses because he doesn't want to pay him a tip. And while he's in line, he hears a rumor that there's a big highfalutin keynote speaker at the keynote, somebody who's going above and beyond the Call of Duty, and he thinks that maybe it's him.
the Mall of America security guard, Donna, says, by the way, did you hear there's a secret keynote speech?
There's someone who's gone above and beyond. And then she kind of winks while she like non-committally points at him. She never says, it's you. She says somebody very special. And she does this kind of like point thing, which he takes as she means me. Donna never says the words, it's you. And then he says, do you really think? I mean, I had hoped, but do you think? And he doesn't say, is it me? And she says something about not giving it to RoboCop. And so she's excited that that dude would be there. And he thinks that she's saying it would be him.
Paul Blart says that it makes sense that he is going to be the keynote speaker unless RoboCop is attended. And Paul Blart says he would stand down for RoboCop, and she says, he's not real.
That's very good.
And he says, no, he's not real. And he says, but I would definitely stand down for him. And then she reiterates, she takes a perfect beat, and reiterates, he ain't real.
Donna, while enjoyable, a little bit of a black stereotype character.
big time.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit
I mean, there's
grody.
lots of stereotypes in this here film. Yes, the concept of a secret keynote speech with an unknown speaker is wild in the first place. The fact that Paul Blart would assume it's him.
Because someone thinks that he did something good 6 years ago, he may be the keynote speaker, decides that he is the keynote speaker of this event, even though he has not prepared a keynote speech.
Two real quick things. When Paul Blart does finally get to the front of the line, he yells, "Yellow ha!" which is the first of many sort of garbage, gibberish, dookie things that falls out of this dude's idiot mouth. It's awful to every person he meets for no reason at all.
Paul Blart goes to the hotel concierge, or the reception even, and asks for his room key.
When they're like, oh, your room's not ready. And he leans in and was like, I'm the keynote speaker. I'm kind of a big fucking deal. Give me my room.
And the guy says that his room isn't ready. And he's set up by the universe of the film like he is a villain for having said that. Because Paul Blart is our hero. He is our knight in shining armor. And it's like this villainous guy at the reception, Heath, is out to get him. So the reason why the hotel manager comes to give him the key,
who is a very attractive woman,
is supposed to be this big mea culpa from the hotel going, I'm so sorry we fucked with you, man. Like, here's us apologizing.
And he insists that she is hitting on him, which she, of course, is not, because there's nothing in her behavior that would indicate that, which people know because they just watched the movie.
Davina romance subplot, the hotel manager, that from like their first interaction, she starts off weird, talking about his soft hands, and he immediately jumps to like, whoa, back off. I can tell you're in love with me. And then throughout the movie, it just keeps spiraling weirder and weirder. Once again, another movie existing within this universe.
She goes back and tells the very, very handsome head of security about the situation that just happened. He says, I have heard that sometimes overweight people use humor to achieve affection. And that only made me laugh because of the very clinical way the line was written. It wasn't like to win people over. It was to achieve affection. There's nobody else fucking works at this hotel.
Yeah, there's that really hot guy who's in charge of hotel security who is the boyfriend of the hotel manager. And he's good at Eduardo. He's good at his job.
We only hear him say that since he got the job, not so much as a towel has been stolen.
When Eduardo is introduced, Davina, when Eduardo shows up, they are speaking, and at one point during the conversation, he says something in Spanish, which the subtitles translates to speaks in Spanish. The subtitles couldn't put in. It's literally the only line of Spanish dialogue in the whole film, and it is like 5 words.
He calls Kevin James the fat guy. He says El Gordo, and it's like, really, dude? Like,
El Gordo muchacho.
Eduardo sees Paul Blart, walks up to Paul Blart, and just starts dunking on him for no reason at all. Like, Paul Blart does not do anything to incite this. He is a hapless, overweight man who is a guest of this hotel.
And he doesn't even rise to it. Like, the guy's being so mean, and Paul Blart continues to be nice. Eduardo, he's so unnecessarily mean to Paul Blart, who is ostensibly a paying guest at the hotel.
It's actually an all-expenses-paid trip, so Eduardo does not need to extend any respect towards this freeloading mall cop. Eduardo sees Paul Blart as a threat.
5 minutes later, he gambles all his money away without any idea what he's doing. He grouses about the possibility of having to give the guy who parks his car $1 and then throws all of his money on a craps table without even knowing the rules of craps. I mean, literally all the money he has
is while he's in the middle of playing craps on a really hot table. And then after the craps are done, someone off screen just says, like, for about this distance, "Oh, the fat guy ruined it."
He gets hung up like getting things out of his pocket because he's so fat.
And right now, let me tell the audience something that I kept forgetting in the movie. There's a heist going on around all of this.
They have a score for the heist score that they return to. They put a yellow filter or whatever those things you put in front of the camera are. And they
let you know it's fucking heist time. It's heist time.
Planning the robbery to occur the day before they change all of the security on all of the artwork in the hotel over.
There's a guy that walks up into the room with all the heisters, and he sits down at the couch, and he has this high-tech laptop, and somebody says, looks like we paid off the right NSA guy. He sets this box down on a coffee table, and he presses a button, and like 5 screens flop out of it, and it's like bad. It looks bad to look at it. Like the technology that made it was bad. That fucking computer. Yeah. That fucking computer that folds out of a small box and there's 5 screens and all of a sudden this dude's on a fucking Alienware experimental gaming rig.
Right after he opens that ridiculous laptop, immediately after he does this, their plans appear on the hotel television that is framed into a wall. Like, there's a minute-long sequence where they talk about how security protocols have changed and the NSA guy is supposed to have a contact that alerted him, and here are the options for, like, skirting this, and it's a bunch of technobabble.
They also do a thing where, like, the fucking Hank dude walks in and says, like, "We've had a few noise complaints," and there's, like, a second of tension, and they're like, "I guess that's why we hired you."
Hank's the dude who is part of the team, but that's not revealed on his first showing because he walks into the room dressed fully as hotel security just to freak them out, to give us audience the sense that, they might be in trouble here, and then they're like, jokes, it's our dude.
Like, so Hank, the guy who's posing as the security guy, comes in and they're all like cocking their guns and super, like, ready to kill whoever walks in the door. There's room service in the room. The woman sitting at the table has like a coffee service set up.
He comes in this it is literally a blue jacket and a name tag and a black tie and white dress shirt. And he says to him, "You don't want to know what it took to get the real deal. Do you mean a blue coat?"
The only thing that Hank says in the movie, which is accurate and useful.
It gets even better because immediately after he does this, the NSA security guy pulls a coat off a rack that they have in the room, and it's the exact same thing that Hank is wearing. So it's like, apparently it's not that hard to get them because my dude just like has one.
Very end of this first sort of establishing heist scene where the crew is together and they get out their dumb computer, a woman in the room with the thieves says, here's an updated map that's going to show us where all the art is. There's something like 13 pieces. And then on the television in the room, a 3D map of the hotel with 13 red dots appears on it. Everybody in the room looks at it for, I kid you not, 2 seconds. And then Vincent says, "All right, let's get going."
My favorite line in the whole movie comes from the heist, and it's like the introduction of these heisty characters. And the bad guy, Neil McDonough's character,
I don't even know if they named him in the film, but he's a cool guy.
Oh, you know what just popped in my head? It's Vincent.
We should call him Ocean's 14.
Says, "I want to be out of here in no less than 9 hours." They all have watches that they click and it starts counting down 9 hours. So there's this dude named Lane, right? That was like a valet or like a bellboy or something that like Paul Blart's daughter takes a shine to, Maya. And they hit it off. When he's with the other security people, it's literally like the writers and the director and all of them said, this is his herd. The hotel manager and the other security guy, it's literally like if you saw like a wildebeest and a lion meeting in a movie. And then when he's with the other security people, they're saying like, yeah, these are his animal. He belongs with them. Yeah. It's really weird.
It is weird.
21 minutes, 34 seconds into the film. It's during the Chekhov's gun convention where they're going through all of the new tools and explaining explicitly how Paul Blart is going to use them in about 51 minutes to thwart the bad guys.
This movie has the most Chekhov guns.
Security officers buy all their own equipment, so this is like a trade show for them.
Do you know how many goddamn product sponsors you can put in a trade hall meetup? A shit ton. A lot.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that.
511 Tactical Gear. That's a real company, guys, so I'm assuming all the other ones were too.
It's a Chekhov's gun convention. There's no jokes in this part. It's a trade show for people in the security industry, and he's literally going table to table, and people are just telling him, like, here's something to use later. Here's a gun that shoots marbles. Really? A gun that shoots marbles?
There's a man who gets about 5 seconds of screen time, again, approximately, and he says,
Marbles. You can't run with these under your feet. You can't even stand.
So there's the guy who's like, that's a great belt. How much you pay for that belt? Do you have a belt guy? And on, do you have a belt guy? You got to have a belt guy.
Oh, can we talk about Khan real quick? Khan is an Indian man, and a lot of the jokes tend to sort of revolve around the fact that he is foreign to the culture. The first time we meet him, he comes over and hugs each person he meets and says, I'm Khan Mubi, pleased to meet.
Khan Mubi hugs him, and he's hugging everyone as a way of saying thank you. And on the one hand, like, again, the Khan Mubi character is not unlike Donna, like a very easy, lazy, like, he's foreign, get it?
When he hugs Paul Blart the first time, Paul Blart says, I really needed that, or something to that
Oh, he
effect.
did.
Yeah,
He did. He
So then he hugs him again.
a
he
cry
just
for
lost
help
it.
in plain view.
He lost everyone.
He said the first thing he says is, he's like, we're going right in there.
Khan Mubi gives him another hug, and then Kevin James, to his great credit, I think ad-libs like, oh, there's a little kiss on the shoulder there.
There, 21 minutes, 34 seconds is when they get to the booth that has the glue gun, the CGI glue gun. And the vendor at that booth is a man who is extremely nervous. This segment opens up with Paul Blart and the 4 security guards sort of fanned out behind him, all looking so stone-faced and bored as if this is the 67th take of this. Paul Blart says, what's the latest, friend? And then it cuts to the vendor who says, the big sticky mess, a grenade launcher that shoots glue foam. Exactly like that. And his inflection goes, that shoots glue foam. And he places the emphasis on foam, and halfway through the word, he's like, foam. The camera cuts away from him and back to the crew of people who just nod sort of solemnly. And then it cuts away. The big sticky mess, a grenade launcher that shoots glue foam. Because it's money while they're all shopping through all of this security gear. And then there's a quick cut to the art thieves starting to set up the heist, which, like, perfect again.
God.
And then it really kicks into this breakdown as Paul goes in to test out the beanbag launcher, which makes it seem like badass shit's about to happen, which it doesn't. But at the end of that breakdown is this sort of final refrain into the last verse of the song that's like down now money. While those 4 notes hit, fucking Eduardo picks up the gun and shoots the targets. I'm not kidding you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like,
No way.
fucking
No way.
perfectly. And then there's another heist scene to like finish out the song.
It's a beanbag. It's a beanbag gun. He finds a beanbag gun on the show floor, and then they like try it out, and he tries it out, and he sucks at it.
And right now, let me tell the audience something that I kept forgetting in the movie. There's a heist going on around all of this. These henchmen have only one gun.
And 90% of the time, the tool they use is this is not a joke, a USB dongle.
The woman who pretends to drop her purse and distracts 2 people, and the dude who's already pretending to be a guard takes that opportunity to pop some kind of shell with, I guess, like fake screens inside of it, broadcasting for the camera over the camera.
He is distracting the 2 guards so that he can use a plunger without looking real weird to pop up that like 5-sided screen thing that goes over the security camera. So it's got the perfect vision of what used to be displayed there, but like coming to it enclosed through these screens.
Into sort of the crux of the whole plan, which is the USB jump drive.
It's a USB dongle that they
how
plug.
you have a security pedestal with a USB port in the front of it?
Yeah, and then they plug it in, and then they can take the art.
There is a roboticized glass cutter that is implemented to cut a glass case that has artwork hiding beneath it.
Right.
And a trash can with a lid that rises up.
They are carrying out the Van Gogh painting that they stole in, I shit you not, a translucent black bag. You can see the fucking painting they are walking
looks like
away
a
with.
reusable bag they got at Trader Joe's.
But somebody in some prop department thought, people watching this movie, they're probably stupid enough they forget what's in the bag. we got to remind them it's a painting, okay, of sunflowers.
Then when they're taking the last art piece, he gets on his walkie-talkie, which is like just totally on a public access channel, and he goes, "Okay, we're nearly done. Get the helicopter ready for 3 hours time."
It's a Chekhov's gun convention.
There are 2 times when Saul Gundermutt comes up to Paul Blart to talk to him when Paul Blart is in the middle of doing other things. And both the times he walks up to him, he says, "Hey, did I catch you at a bad time?"
I catch you at a bad time.
He's confronted by people who are like, "Hey, we heard that you thought you were going to be given the keynote." And it's just like, you did? That like he literally just got here.
There's this scene that we've just described of him sort of being confronted by the hotel staff, and they're all kind of dunking on him collectively. They're forming the Monstars with Eduardo about sort of the differences between real security staff and real cops and dumb mall cops. Straight into the scene that's all about sort of his daughter going to UCLA and leading this different path through life than the one he lived, existing in this other class, and he's worried about what that means about their relationship and the distance it's going to cause between them. Just sort of about these differences between his life and the lives of other people that he's maybe jealous of. The song behind that is Us and Them. It is pretty good.
Holy shit.
Pretty good.
Then he learns that he's not giving the keynote speech. Another security officer is.
Saul Gundermutt says, "Yeah, it's going to be, Nick. It's going to be great." And Paul Blart is heartbroken, and then Nick shows up. Nicholas Turturro plays Nick Palermo in this film. Goes to Paul Blart and is a complete asshole to him for literally no cause at all. It brags about delivering the keynote speech for reasons that
was at one point he tells the story. We hear the tail end of the story of him stopping one from stealing yogurt. That's it. That's all we hear. And so the best we can assume is he is being honored for stopping a yogurt thing.
Yeah. At that moment, as he's getting bullied, mid-conversation, he sees someone selling Segways and goes over to steal one.
Guy's obsessed with security, right? Obsessed with safety. He makes a huge point of this in his day-to-day life. He's obsessed with protecting his daughter and protecting himself and being safe in all things. Except then he steals a Segway from a very polite man who's asking him to just provide a driver's license and then refuses to, and then drives it into traffic.
He comes up on the guy who's like has the Segways, and he gets on a Segway to like show off, and the Segway guy's like, "Hey, I need to see your ID," and he's basically like, "Fuck, I know you're just trying to do your job. Suck my nuts. Like, I'm just gonna steal your Segway."
Great Gig in the Sky, fucking killer song. It's got a bunch of like nice saxophones, and then it ends with this sort of choral breakdown of this woman just delivering this very powerful solo, and that starts the instant that Paul Blart begins his Segway dance, and there is something so beautiful and poetic about his fluid, graceful movements to this just very passionate vocal performance that's happening right behind me.
My second laugh came from the Segway show-off. There's a wiggle moment that's top-notch.
And then he gets on a Segway and he rides it out of the hotel and he gets hit by a car.
Also, he dodges the first car that comes at him while he's on the Segway. He says, "Oh!" He says that right when the singer just sort of ejaculates this, "Oh!" And then he gets hit by another car and says, "Oh," again, and it happens again.
And he's just lying on the street in a pool of his own blood, still alive.
Yeah, he can't die. And he's laying on his back, and Maya leaves the room to like go party without him, and she's like, "I'm sorry about the keynote speech." The cars in this movie are all very clean. I took the time to write that down. When you enjoy your watch, clean cars.
So there's this dude named Lane. Paul Bart's daughter takes a shine to Maya. They hit it off, and also meets his daughter by the pool.
I have no idea what his job is at the casino. I think maybe he's a valet, but then he's at the poolside, and he's everywhere. He's kind of just like a gopher.
Elaine gets her a gift, and it's a Wynn snow globe because they're at the Wynn Hotel. So Lane said it was either that or sunscreen, which implies to me that he only had the option of the gift shop because it's all that he had access to.
Oh,
he
yeah,
makes it
that's
very
right.
clear that he has been stuck at work the entire time. And that's why he bought her a snow globe from the hospital, from the gift shop at the hotel.
They go from 0 to 60
That's
so
love, bro.
fast with that. And then, like, Teresa watching it, the first thing she said was, why do they instantly have this rapport? But it, like, makes me think he's up to something, even though I know he's not.
Well,
and I just don't trust him as a character.
Lane can only buy her gifts from the
Yes.
gift shop hotel.
And he's everywhere.
Yes.
Lane?
He's a spectral prisoner of the Wynn Hotel.
There
he was
it is.
murdered there in a passion, and he can't leave.
He's the spectral security system.
Lane is trapped between the planes, and rather than like trying to romance Maya, he knows that she has Blart blood like running through her veins, and so like she can pass between the planes also. So he's trying to get her
I
to
like
like
that.
go into the cave so that he can leave it, sort of situation.
But then he does fall in love with her. I do want to make that clear because he chooses not to.
To let her, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a scene where his daughter sneaks off to hang out with Ghost Boy.
Paul Blart goes back to the hotel, talk with his daughter Maya, and she's not there. And the bath is still full, and the candles are still lit.
Paul Blart is meant to be portrayed as he's a buffoon, but a semi-competent security guard. He returns to his hotel room, no sign of a breaking and enter, like no sign of a being in or nothing to suggest that there's been a forced entry. Immediately panics on account of his daughter being missing, and then so like goes into a paranoid frenzy. Calls up the police
And calls down to security. Security comes up. He tells Eduardo, in once again what I thought was a really funny highlighting of Eduardo being a bully to him and Paul Blart having nothing but respect for Eduardo. Eduardo says, we're gonna find her. I'm gonna work hard at this despite our differences. And as he walks away, Paul Blart says, our differences? Like, Paul Blart is unaware that they have beef.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then a real cop shows up and is asking Paul Blart, like, is it possible she's with your wife?
They're trying to establish motive. He says, have you got any money? And Paul Blart says, define a lot of money. And he says, any. He says, no. And then he says, are you an important person? And you just see Eduardo behind him in frame, just shaking his head.
no.
So the cop moves forward. Have you had trouble with the spouse? He says, no wife. Girlfriend? No. And then another separate cop goes, does anybody love you?
Yeah, man, he's a cop who's just met him. Like, Paul didn't do anything to him, and his daughter's just been kidnapped. As far as he's concerned, here's a cop who's walked into a kidnapping and just starts railing on this fucking dude.
Yeah.
Now, it is a kidnapping, by the way. The only context they are given is that his adult daughter is not in the room when he thought she would be.
And they even say, like, we usually wait 24 hours. Then why are you here?
What are you doing
You drove
here?
all the way there.
They're police officers, not just
that's
hotel
true.
security. They're police officers there.
by the pool.
The scene where he gets in a fight with his daughter.
Paul Blart is spying on his daughter in the hotel, and she catches him and is basically like, hey, fuck off. That sucks. Like, what are you doing?
Maya's bathing suit, it's a great bathing suit.
Yeah,
It's
Great
fun.
bathing suit.
I
And
enjoyed that bathing suit a lot.
Immediately
It's great.
followed by Paul Blart saying, "That's too. What are you doing? You
told me
that's
Victoria's
too
Secret."
risque." Yeah, it's
That's the joke, right? Because it's like a one piece bathing suit.
yeah. He gets jealous of her new ghostly boyfriend and says, "What are you hanging out with Chicken Chow Lane?"
My third laugh was when Kevin James says Judge Blart is now in session. It hits the bread plate and it flips up in the air. Because hear me out, he doesn't react to it. It
It's a
flips and he
Jesus.
just keeps looking at his daughter.
She says, go away, because that fucking sucks. And he goes away slowly, and there's like sad piano music.
And then there's a single fucking shot where you think there might be like, oh man, here comes a sad montage. It is a single shot of Paul Blart going up an escalator while the rest of the world, the rest of the, like, this flashy neon strip and all these thousands of people on it are moving past him in hyper fast motion, but he's moving in regular speed while some fucking like sad David Gray music plays in the background.
When Hahachi from Tekken, he's the head of security, I can't remember his character's name, but he's got the same hairdo as Hahachi, introduces Paul Blart to his wife. What was the name of the lady who I found specifically hilarious?
Anna Gasteyer.
Anagastaya. And they're talking about when their daughter left for college. So when she's describing having a child, her and her husband's child leave home for university, and she's reminiscing, and she's like,
a cold tomb of loneliness.
Yeah, I just put Sarah McLachlan on blast and open a wardrobe
and cry inside it.
And smell the sweaters.
Clothes.
In the final scene Anna Gasteyer is in, you can see she was wearing a Celine Dion shirt. In that scene about the sweaters, her jacket is zipped up over it, but she's wearing a different Celine Dion shirt.
Wanted to bring home the worst scene in the entire movie.
This guy who's going to originally give the keynote, chatting up a woman in a bar.
Adam Sandler's wife.
Adam Sandler's wife.
Jackie Sandler.
Not in fiction, but
it's going badly. He's very drunk, this man. Paul Blart walks into shot. We see him. He spies the scene. He says, "Oh, officer needing assistance," because Nick is coming on super strong with the woman he's just met at a bar. She verbally, out loud, says, "Please go away. I don't want any part of this."
Not being coy.
It's not going to happen.
Not being coy. She's screaming at him.
Yeah, she's like,
that is what draws his attention.
This isn't on. This isn't happening. I don't want any part of this. So Paul Blart goes up there and starts trying to convince this woman that she's been a little quick to judge this creepy, drunk arsehole who refuses to relent even though she's told him to go away.
Blart tries to convince the woman that she's overreacting from the security guard who's sexually harassing her.
Paul Blart comes over and is like, "I think this is a misunderstanding. I think you were just lonely." And she's like, I literally told him to go away. He's literally drunk and I want him to go away. And Paul Blart goes, "I think maybe he just thought you were lonely." Probably the worst part. It gives her pause, like, maybe he did just think I was lonely.
And he also says, he's a good guy, and I think that maybe you just took it wrong.
The woman is like, "You know what, maybe I was too quick to judge Nick."
Paul Blart sees a man who has been nothing but utterly cruel to him, hitting on a woman who does not want this attention. Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 walks over to this man who he hates and this strange woman he does not know, and then proceeds to not only defend this hideous man, but takes his side against this woman he does not know, and then proceeds to gaslight this woman into thinking that Nick Palermo was concerned about her fucking security.
The guy who was too drunk was supposed to deliver the keynote, so instead Blart's going to do it. He's hyping himself up as Any Color You Like is really, really getting going. Just a really hype solo there as he's just jumping up and down.
He's in this scuzzy kind of backstage green room. Not scuzzy, but a green room.
And then he starts to hyperventilate, and the song starts coming down a little bit into its resolution. He says, "I'm going to go get some air."
And he opens a door into what is titled the Tranquility Garden.
He walks outside, the door shuts behind him, and Brain Damage starts playing for the fucking bird scene. He steps foot onto the lawn outside. The lunatic is on the grass.
Out on the lawn, there's a guy playing piano.
He's playing the piano when Paul Blart comes out in a completely empty garden.
Yes.
That man is just always out there, just always playing the piano.
He's very stressed about it, and there's a bird that's giving him the stink eye. And
An African
he's
crane.
African crane. I looked it up.
Okay, so he fights a bird.
That whole bird fight takes place in a garden where you cannot really see back inside of the resort.
Kevin James yelling, "Hefeweizen!" at the bird to scare it away. And it's not even the bird fight that's funny. The physical slapstick comedy of a CGI, sometimes it's a practical bird.
There's a guy playing piano watching the entire thing of a very large man fighting a bird, and he's just playing the hell out of the piano as if people were having a nice cotillion.
Piano music is playing over the entire scene and just underscores it all, and Paul Blart keeps looking over at this piano player for help, and the piano player makes that subtle move, which is the friendly nod and acknowledgement. "Yes sir, I see you, welcome to the hotel." Kevin James is like, "Can you help me with this bird that is killing me?" And the guy keeps just smiling and nodding politely.
That's the Shadow Man. He wanted to have front row seats to his next ruination. He just didn't want to interfere with it. It's a hands-off science experiment. And also, if you think about it, the Shadow Man spends the beginning of the movie just fucking this guy up nonstop, but he can't help himself, right? He can't fucking help himself. He's got to get in there a little bit. So, hence, the bird fight scene is set up.
If you thought you were in heaven, but turned out it was actually hell because nothing ever changes and a bird attacks you and a guy plays piano.
And then he goes out to give the keynote speech, and Gundermutt goes out to introduce him and says, I know you all were excited for the other guy. And it's like, for this secret keynote?
Also Eduardo.
Eduardo.
Yeah. The line he says about, like, why are you here? And he says, I thought Minnie Kiss was playing.
Paul Blart's giving his speech, and he's like, if anyone could do this, then... And then it cuts to him, like, watching the speech, and he's like, anybody could do this. How?
Kevin James said, okay, well, we've got a banana. I've also got a notebook half filled with jokes about security guards. I could cobble together into some semblance of a speech. We could put that in the middle of the movie.
In the middle of his keynote speech, when he does eventually get to give the keynote speech, it pans across these 6 portraits of people on stage with him inexplicably. I think we're to assume that they have died. Now, one of these portraits is, I read in the IMDb facts, Gary Coleman, who in his adult life did end up as a security guard. Also, at the other end of the portraits, there's just this dude with what looks to be a long white photoshopped like wizard beard. This is a doctored picture. It's very clearly a doctored picture.
The guy who's supposed to give the keynote speech is drunk, and he's too drunk to give it, so they ask Paul Blart to give it. Simultaneously, his daughter, who is considering going to UCLA and abandoning him, playing into his fear of abandonment, is at a party with an elf that works in the parking garage. Then later, Lane is at a party, which I'm assuming is very late in the evening.
And he invites her up to a party in like one of the suites. And she says, is this your room? And he says, I'm friends with a bunch of the housekeeping staff, and they let me know when a high roller checks out early.
Lane is actually in a concurrent but completely separate Van Wilder-style movie in which he does not work at the casino. He is there, like, he picked up a shirt and a name tag, and he's there to, like, meet girls, and that's why he's throwing a wild party in somebody's suite.
Da Dip came on, the song that Lane introduces and Maya responds to. That song debuted in 1997.
Right.
So, assuming that Lane is at least 18 years old to be working at this casino, it came out the year he was hypothetically born, if he is not an unstuck-in-time traveler.
Not fair. Because after they sing together, Lane says, I can't believe you know that song. So
I took note of that also.
So Lane is noting that it is unusual that he would know Da Dip.
And so then she gets a call, right, from Paul Blart, leaves a voicemail.
Every time somebody pops up on, like, a telephone, it's the most, like, detailed, like, it's a picture of the person's face pops up.
Yeah.
And not, like, a screenshot.
So she goes to listen to it, needs to find a quiet spot.
Yeah.
Opens a door from the party filled with 45 teenagers and 20-somethings into the art heist room.
There isn't even a door. She walks past a hallway and looks in.
The next scene that happens is Paul Blart walking up to take the stage to deliver his speech. And it is the first moment where something good happens for Paul Blart. He does this great speech and really gets the crowd going. And we get that right as Maya stumbles into the art heist.
And sees Neil McDonough pointing a gun at somebody.
Yeah.
Because in the previous heist scene to this, the NSA agent says to Vincent that they have moved up the time of shipping and says that he had a guy on the inside who was supposed to tell him when that happened, but clearly he failed to do so. But in that scene, when she walks in to catch them, they're standing in that room with a gun pointed at a guy. That's the guy who was their inside man who failed to tell them they're moving. They're going to execute him in what they think is an empty presidential suite and leave his body there when they escape. That's why they're in the presidential suite that Lane thinks is empty.
Ocean's 14, the villain, is like, he gets really furious when Maya, Kevin James's daughter in the film, comes into his room.
And then, like, this other agent acting against Paul Blart steps into the picture, and so the Shadow Man takes a back seat for a bit and just kind of spectates, sees what happens. Oh, you're going to take the daughter. That's good. It's interesting. Maybe I found a new ally in my quest to destroy Paul Blart.
I want to walk you through the flow as it literally happened.
Okay, yes, please,
Okay.
back into the left. Go for it.
Beat by beat. I'm seriously. I'm jogging through this with my mouse. Okay. Lane is at the party that he is throwing in the hotel in this abandoned suite. Right. He gives a thumbs up to some friends, walks over to a door, opens the door, and he is literally in the suite. Right? And here's the thing that like trips me out probably the most. They didn't. I'm looking at the deadbolt on the door, and it is not closed.
They capture her, and then Lane comes wandering in, seemingly 5 minutes later, and then Neil McDonough goes, well, this room's compromised.
Yeah,
Lane just wandered in, and they're like, well, now there's 2 of them. Now it's an issue.
Paul Blart goes to the presidential suite, and they're not there because they have taken Lane and Maya back to the suite they are actually
So
staying
when she
in.
says, I saw something I shouldn't have, that's literally what she's referring to.
Yeah, I walked into this.
So just to clarify, they have booked a set of hotel suites
That they're staying in.
In addition to that, they are aware that the presidential suite is empty because a high roller checked out early, which
Correct.
is the same reason that Lane in an adjacent one is throwing a party.
Yes.
I would also point out that the presidential suite is at ground level because they walk out of it into this. There's a swimming pool outside the 2 sliding glass doors. Think about it.
Paul Blart finally finds a foothold with the criminal organization that has kidnapped his daughter. He sees a young man wearing a guard's uniform, and he can detect from the guard's uniform that it is not authentic. And here's how he does it. He looks... He says that the buttons on the uniform have a kind of brass that uniform company has not used for 18 years. But he says that because of that, it can't possibly belong to this young man, so he has to be a traitor. So the way Paul Blart imagines jobs is that you get a uniform that you buy yourself and keep it forever.
The way he solves that is like Sherlockian, like his attention to detail, but then literally the very next second, he can't tell that he's too far away from the dude to headbutt him.
Daughter is in actual jeopardy, has been taken by the villain who's acting, up a storm, but that's all by the by. And as we discussed in the room, Paul Blart is like, 5 missed calls from the daughter I was paranoid about, but 6 hours ago. I think that it's going to be okay.
When she calls him and tells him that she's being held at gunpoint, he tells her maybe she's overreacting and she needs to calm down a little bit.
She's on the phone saying, I'm in trouble. People are following me. I saw something I shouldn't have seen. And Paul Blart says, I've dealt with this situation before. It's all bark, no bite. Don't worry about it.
He's on the phone to the mastermind behind the art thief who's got the girl, and he's got time to crack jokes with him.
There's a lot of levity in him losing his one loved one.
He's running bits.
Yeah.
And is trying to be all threatening, and then he passes out.
This is where laugh number 5 came in for me.
Oh, God.
He's hypoglycemic. And so as he's talking with Neil McDonough, he passes out, falls asleep.
And right as he hits the floor, On the Run starts going. Again, that sort of intense, just sort of pulsating heist song. And it is really, really good background music for Paul Blart crawling across the floor, trying just so intently to get this dripping ice cream cone.
And it looks like he's going to steal an ice cream off a kid.
And in order to regain his strength, like Superman in the yellow sun, he has to slide underneath a little girl's dripping ice cream cone.
As he just lay on the ground, as Kevin James pretty much just
took a money shot.
They really dripped sticky pink cream onto Kevin James's real face. That's his face that he has for life. During the ice cream scene, the ice cream girl holding the cone has a sister. And the sister says out loud the line, "Daddy, look at the beautiful flowers. Can I draw on them?" There are no flowers. There are no flowers.
Okay, good.
There aren't any flowers. The flowers aren't there.
Well-
But moreover, if flowers were there, what the fuck are you talking about?
And beyond that, the father responds by saying, "Not now, sweetie." On the phone.
Daddy, look at the beautiful flowers. Can I draw on them?
Not now, honey. Daddy's on the phone. Go with Molly.
And can I also say, no, he's not. He is not on the phone.
What sort of
we
phone
see
call?
him He's not speaking to anyone. I don't see a phone.
And then the scene following that, after he's energized by these 4 drops of ice cream, is he stands up and then is sneaking through the high roller suites, like real good.
I'm looking at the screen showing the reservation for the criminal because Paul Blart asked it to be pulled up. The name on the reservation is Norbertine Shipping. The phone number is an 800 number. The address in the address field says Hamburg, Germany, because that's what addresses do. The requests on the room are corporate booking, VIP.
By the way, at this point, we see Maya sort of locked up in the room with Elaine, and she says, I think they're stealing art. Hey, Maya, you figured that out. So it takes Paul Blart. There's a scene of Paul Blart like banging his head against a painting, and then he's like, "Oh wait, they're stealing art."
I also want to find out why he just shouts "Widdershins" when he realizes that the art is being stolen.
Yeah.
It's not a thing, and I actually think he says "Windershins," which is not a word. Widdershins is a word.
It literally takes him a half hour longer to figure this out than his daughter, who had 0 clues, I feel like.
So Paul Blart walks into a room, and he obviously is in quite a heightened emotional state. He's looking for his daughter. Everything's happening around him.
As he does a absurd amount of fucking around, knowing that his daughter has been stolen by maniacs.
When he when he unwraps and eats the Hershey's Kiss.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You're just in your head going, dude, dude, we need to go get your daughter, man. Like those men have anyway. So listen, he goes into the room and he thinks he's sneaking up on one of these sneaky criminals that's kidnapped his daughter.
A woman who was on what do you call it, hotel room service, walks in, startles him.
Maid service.
So with cat-like reflexes, which are inherent with the Paul Blart character, he kind of death punches
directly to the solar plexus with the force of 1,000 fists.
Someone who he thinks is a baddie but turns out to be a 75-year-old housekeeping woman.
And she hits the ground very hard. This is a woman, I might add, who cannot be a day under 70 years old. And she is incredibly apologetic to him.
It's not his
moment of comedy.
Well, because it's not his room either.
She keeps apologizing.
She keeps it super professional.
He keeps going, I'm so sorry I hit you. And she's like, no. It was my fault. I shouldn't have been sneaking around like that.
And she does say my second favorite line, which is, it shifts the focus from my arthritis.
Right, yeah, do you want me to call it anyway?
He says, I need to call you medical attention. And she says, no, that's not necessary. It just distracts from the pain of my arthritis.
Because he just keeps up this thing of like, are you all right? And she goes, no, look, it's okay. She's been like mortally wounded here.
Yeah,
like,
no, that was a limit break, death blow, final punch.
The last beat is she asks him if he wants turn down service, and he says no. And it's a real shame he didn't say yes.
He finds a nail, and that's it. That's the smoking gun that turns it all around for Paul Blart.
The guy who was working in the warehouse.
Myrtle was his name.
Paul Blart thinks that he can lie and tell Myrtle, the shipping man, that he works for Shipping Internal Affairs, when there is a patch on this man's shirt that says he does security at the mall.
This man, Myrtle, who works in a warehouse, is convinced by Paul Blart that Paul Blart is the manager of the warehouse or something. So he's doing some recon on the art heists.
It's from Internal Affairs.
And Myrtle says, okay, do you mind if I eat my lunch? And he reaches into a small brown bag and he pulls out, and this is the joke. He pulls out an old banana. It's almost black. It's almost been mummified. Any nutrients.
When he peels the peel, it sounds like crinkly paper.
And he just eats an old. Oh, guys, this banana's so old.
So that is funny.
Myrtle says, do you mind if I eat my lunch? It's like 9 p.m. Is he a vampire, like a vampire, but like a fruit bat vampire?
It's literally just a man named Myrtle eats a rotten banana.
And I also noticed this time it's the eye contact he makes with Paul Blart as they eat it.
Kevin James just kind of got in there and he made a yuck face, and then it showed the guy eating the old banana again, and it showed Kevin James one more time. He's like, oh, that's an old banana, and that was it.
Hank is chasing Paul Blart.
He pulls the gun out in front of Myrtle as well. And Myrtle's just like, okay.
At this point, we see Maya sort of locked up in the room with Elaine. She shatters the snow globe to use the wires to hack the door. There is a half-second long reaction shot from Lane looking very sad.
Because he's sad that the snow globe he bought was. He does this like, oh.
But the reaction is like she didn't like it.
It's more than that because the snow globe breaking is done in super slow motion. And then we cut to Lane. That is playing in full 24 FPS, normal speed. He gives his performance for, I would estimate, somewhere between 12 and 16 frames, about 3/4 of a second. And then we're back to slow motion footage of the globe. And it is so jarring but so brief that if you blink, you miss it.
Paul Blart's getting chased around by hotel security. There's also a nice moment where this is when the snow globe and the very, very good reaction from Lane happens, where Maya figures out that, I can short circuit the door using the wires in the snow globe. And literally while this scene is happening, Paul Blart is using a paperclip to short circuit a Segway to steal it. He gets away from this guy, and his immediate reaction is to climb inside of a bulletproof suitcase.
Hides in a not bulletproof suitcase that says it's bulletproof.
And wait for him at the top of some stairs.
That ends up with bullet holes in it.
And then, bounces out of a window, has my 7th laugh, where he bursts out of the water and says, "Not today, Death." And I laughed pretty hard at
that was okay, Travis. That wasn't a joke. That was Paul Blart literally pleading to God. Still, this didn't do me.
Basically, there's a dude chasing Paul Blart for he just sees Paul Blart, who's dripping wet from falling into this pond, and pulls a gun on him. He doesn't know that he's Paul Blart. Well, he doesn't know that he knows.
You haven't been following the subtle clues. It's because he's fat and he hates him.
So then he's chasing Paul Blart. So in the craziest fucking turn in this movie, Paul Blart stumbles into Cirque du Soleil, gets to the entrance, and the only option is to enter the show.
With angel wings on.
Crowd.
He puts angel wings on.
Wings.
He gets away, runs through a door, and we see the Cirque du Soleil the moment that Great Gig in the Sky comes in. And this is, again, like a ballet of a performance of all of these dancers and everybody moving in beautiful slow motion.
The criminal is chasing Paul Blart on a stage in front of everyone. There's no way, everybody doesn't see it.
The best thing about it, the show must go on. No one in the show
takes him a while.
Reacts.
Yeah, they do say stuff like, "Huh? What's up?" But they execute.
He slams into them swinging from a rope.
He executes the choreography perfectly.
During the Cirque du Soleil scene, one of the performers, I guess, says, "Who is this guy? What's going on?" They are not shown. It's just a pretty far away shot of this chaotic scene taking place, and we just hear this voice that pierces the silence of, "Who is this guy? What's going on?"
They really leaned into the show must go on kind of mentality, as though if that happened, just a random person stumbled in and started knocking people off of the platform and injuring people, that the entire stage crew would just be like, "Just keep going, it's gonna be fine, just keep going, don't stop it, don't stop the show."
They're professionals, man.
In the original script, Kevin James had written it that he sort of interrupts and sort of takes Cirque du Soleil off the rails, and Cirque du Soleil said, "We'll be in your garbage movie with the stipulation that the show will go on and we will showcase our professional
We'll be
performers."
reflected as the absolute consummate professionals we are.
No, that was their actual show that night. They weren't going to do 2 shows. If you were there that night, you saw Kevin James in it.
Just quickly, if we could revisit the RoboCop exchange.
I didn't realize also the first time I watched it, there's a callback to that during the Cirque du Soleil thing. She's in the audience and she says, "Is this real?"
All of this is prefaced to how hilarious Anna Gasteyer is, no matter what the circumstance. So she's sitting next to her husband, who's been written a pretty bit, not a very meaty part. And she's sitting there, and her husband says, "Is that Paul Blart?" And they agree that it is. And then he says, "I couldn't do that," because she's like, "I'd like to see you up there," which is funny. And he's like, "I couldn't do it because of my hamstrings." And then she, this is off mic. This is just improv, I'm pretty sure. She's off mic going, "Oh, I know," and patting him on the back. And it's the commitment to the character of the wife, so reassuring that, yeah, you do have those short hamstrings. I know we'd both love to see you up there, but it's just not for you. You couldn't pull it off.
So he comes off of Cirque. He stands in front of a giant fan and screams. That was number 8.
Jesus, that sucked.
So Maya and Lane escape off the balcony. They go running, seemingly across a huge field or yard or something. And they see a security guard. And they approach him, and it's one of Vincent's guys.
There's a whole running thing where Mini Kiss is performing at the hotel.
When he says, "Do you guys play Beth?" And they say, no, we don't play Beth, very sheepishly. And then one of them says, I told you we should play Beth. And the other one says, not now, Frank.
But is about 35 minutes before credits. The scene where Vincent's oatmeal allergy is revealed. A fake security guard criminal man gets in a gift basket. He pulls out an oatmeal cookie. Vincent says, what is that? What do you have in your hand? He says, oatmeal cookie. Vincent says, I'm deathly allergic. What are you trying to do to me? Get rid of it. This guy then proceeds to walk over to the doors to the balcony, throws them open, and just throws the cookie.
Chucks the cookie out of the balcony. Like, you got it, Buzz. I won't let him hurt you.
But then he needs to go back to the gear showcase to get strapped. Anybody want to guess when he goes back to the gear showcase to get strapped what song is playing?
Money.
It's fucking money again. It's money again. Because Vincent's like, yeah, I got your kid. Don't tell any cops or else your kid's dead. And Paul Blart thereby doesn't tell the security or the cops. What's he do instead? He gets his dumbass fucking stupid friends and forms a little army to fight Vincent and his goons. And Vincent's like, well, that's okay. It's okay that you told these 4 people.
Gently slight you by not acknowledging the fact that you security guards are registered as officers of the law.
Right before the big fight scene, to try to amp people up, Paul Blart says, we are trained to detect, deter, observe, and report. But one day, 6 years ago, a man did more than that. And I am that man. We are that man. And so we say to you, sir, Foot Locker.
He trips.
Well, he trips,
but then he says it again.
Yeah, he says it
repeats.
twice.
As a good chant, it rocks the lads up. You know, you want to get out there. You're fighting with non-lethal weapons against 8 or 9 pretty irate, trained henchmen. When Vincent, a.k.a. Ocean's 14, literally says out loud, you take care of Paul Blart.
Neil McDonough says, give me the gun. You take care of them. He uses the gun, and then he leaves, and they all charge him with their fists.
This is a recurring thing in the film wherein all of his henchmen, who he's hired, handpicked presumably, all of the Dougs of the world, literally are unable or unwilling to take any initiative. Every time anyone makes an escape, literally everyone stands around and waits for Vincent to be like, go after them, shoot them.
They have no autonomy whatsoever, to the point where they're kind of just robots.
The big fight scene's about to start between the mall cops and the fake hotel security.
Like a lengthy fight?
And right as that happens, Any Color You Like starts playing. And that song's just all of these really slow kind of rock and synths over this long slow motion fight scene, and it is really good sync. Finds a beanbag gun, and then later on he's no scoping dudes from across the quad.
So there's the guy who's like, that's a great belt. How much you pay for the belt? Do you have a belt guy? And on, do you have a belt guy? You gotta have a belt guy. And later in the fight, one of the security guards, it's the big hallway fight, one of the security guards is using a belt as a weapon, but not the belt guy.
In this fight, Khan shows up out of nowhere wearing a cape.
Yeah.
And Neil McDonough points out the fact that he is, you brought a superhero. Why is that guy wearing a cape? And they ask him, and he says it's because he came straight from a haircut.
No 2 women ever speak to each other in this movie.
I don't think 2 women are ever on screen at the same time.
No, there is one where Donna is fighting the other woman, and they make eye contact, but no dialogue is shared.
Words. Wow, that's true. Wow.
Boo.
Number 10, the third taser out of 6.
No, there were not 6. There were 75 fucking tasers in that scene. You're done. This movie belabors every fucking thing it does. Like the scene where the guy gets tased, and he gets tased, and they do that. Is it still funny? Well, let's try it for the 36th time.
Hank goes to the bottom of the staircase where he will soon be brained by a Samsonite. But before he does that, he pulls out a gun and just empties a clip into the Segway. And just shoots a Segway in the middle of this casino lobby. I'm pretty sure the big Segway explodes after Paul uses it to ram into a guy. Paul Blart shoots, I kid you not, 4 different things out of the same high-tech security guard launcher, including beanbags, marbles, foam,
He does not shoot the marbles. The marbles dribble out.
And it doesn't work at all.
Not more effectively than a handful of marbles thrown on the ground either.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. That's a failing product.
Marbles are in action. It's the most feeble of all the weapons. All of the mouse get a moment in the sun, and the marbles kind of spill out the front of it.
Well, and the glue gun breaks after the first usage, too.
Let's talk about that foam gun, because there's a bit towards the end of the movie where he gets the foam launcher and he sticks the guy's hand to the wall so he doesn't shoot him. And then he tries to shoot Vincent with it, and foam just kind of dribbles impotently from the tip, from the meatus of the gun. And for whatever reason, that foam is CGI. And it's like, why do we need CGI of just brown liquid dripping out of a gun? Why could we not sort of get practical on that one? But I had this thought after Paul Blart Mall Cop incapacitates like the 9th person after they pull a gun on him, and then he says a catchphrase. A catchphrase is a strong fucking term, but he says something, and then he deploys his trap or uses his ridiculous electric fork weapon, whatever. He always takes a beat, always got to get in that jab, and he does it while they have a gun drawn on him, with the trap or weapon in hand, and they do not shoot the man Paul Blart to death. And I had this thought in my head while watching the movie, which I don't think it's good if you have this thought about a movie's protagonist, but I thought Griffin McElroy, could kill Paul Blart.
So he's doing this big art heist. Well, it's a miracle that he got away with it the way he did. Like, they're doing this in plain view. His henchmen are literally running around with guns in front of all the other patrons at an Airbnb with gun and fake guns. They're doing it. They are so close to getting away with it. What do you do if you're doing this art heist? You take the art, you get it in the chopper, you kill the hostages because they've served their purpose, and you leave. You don't take two 18-year-olds with you in the chopper to deal with for the rest of your life.
Lane. He was actually a piece of artwork himself, being a ghost, the hardest thing to steal, which is why we had to take Maya, Kevin James's daughter in the film, onto the helicopter, because we knew that Lane, like, you can't grab him because he's ethereal, and the only way that he'll go onto the helicopter to be taken as a piece of art is to grab his love, and then he will chase that.
There's a scene towards the end of the film where Paul Blart needs to get to a helipad with some expediency.
There is a moment when Paul Blart is on the rooftop, and Eduardo walks up to him and says, "You just couldn't stay out of it." Maybe it's him saying, like, out of my relationship with Davina, but it is said, like, we the audience, and I think it's supposed to be that the moment is supposed to be we the audience are like, oh, he's turns twist, Eduardo's in on it.
Right.
Deleted scene with Eduardo proposing to Davina.
Oh, wow. They really went deep.
Then she, that's when she flees from Eduardo to follow Paul Blart. And Eduardo says, I know it's only been 4 months, but like, and then he proposes to her and she runs after Paul Blart saying, me amor. That's what then leads to Eduardo on the rooftop saying, you couldn't stay out of it.
The way that the exchange happens, Eduardo's like, you should have stayed out of it. And then Paul Blart says, they've got my daughter. And it's like it hasn't undone the information that Eduardo has in his head. It's just added new information, but suddenly he's on board with Paul.
And the security guard that was supposed to give the keynote speech, but then got drunk.
Moments before, maybe an hour tops, was super drunk enough to pass out, couldn't do the keynote. Everybody else fights.
But then miraculously, completely 100% sobered up, inexplicably.
Kevin's at the top. Oh no, they'll never make it. He kicks open the door to the roof and says, there's no helipad up here, but there is over there.
Arrives on the rooftop with this insane grappling hook that fires, I mean, what appears to be basically a quarter mile between these two things.
He has grabbed the grappling hook gun and fires it across.
And there it turns out there's a knot in the rope.
Because did he use this grappling hook and then get fucking lazy when he was winding it back up? Get a fucking knot in there?
And the way it fires, there would be no way for a knot to like go through the gun mechanism. It's
because it's steel as well. It's like woven steel, so it would actually be hard to put a knot in that rope thing. That steel rope.
There's two shots where on the helipad tower of the there's one where the grappling hook lands, and then there's one after Paul Blart swings onto the rooftop via zip line, right? And in both of these shots, there is a gun. There's a person holding a gun. You only see an arm coming in from the left side of the shot, holding a gun, pointing towards the tower, where Paul Blart is swinging from. So what we have here is someone who is, first off, completely inexplicably hired to guard the edge of a building on the roof, pointing out for possible zip liners from an adjoining tower. And then,
this is your moment, Doc.
This is your moment. And then when Paul Blart fucking zip lines onto this rooftop, this gun does not move. Like 20 feet from this guy, a large gentleman wearing a like police uniform, basically, zip lines onto the
Doug, this is what we hired you for.
And then he goes up onto the roof. He has to get onto the roof of the other building, has this confrontation with Eduardo. The mall cops show up, give him the zip line, and he grabs onto the zip line. Somebody pushes him, and brain damage starts again to underscore the final fight on the other rooftop.
One of the emotional climaxes of the movie, Neil McDonough doesn't try to kill Paul Blart with a gun like he should because he has one. He instead tries to psychologically destroy him by pointing out the fact that he has one thread connecting him to the rest of humanity, and it's his daughter, and she's going to UCLA for college. And we're only half kidding when we say the story is about destroying Paul Blart.
Main villain is inexplicably trying to make Paul Blart sad instead of trying to make Paul Blart dead with gun bullet.
He's trying to make Paul Blart sad, and like, we've seen Paul Blart sad throughout this movie many times, but for some reason in that moment, he's fucking bulletproof to the sadness. It just doesn't affect him. He's hardened.
When they are doing that kind of psychological takedown of his character vis-a-vis our film's villain, Paul Blart starts hammering this dude while he's got a gun to his daughter's head. He starts coming at him hard. He starts antagonizing him needlessly. All he needs to do is give him the painting and he'll get his daughter back. But he doesn't have his daughter at this point, and he just starts having a go at this dude.
Okay. And they're just yelling stuff, and it's really lazy writing because it's like, I'm so crazy I would play trombone on you.
They just got them to improvise G-rated put downs for each other.
Yeah, and it was so bad.
5 of them each in the movie. It was
But
terrible.
I thought that was a crazy scene because, as Justin pointed out, Ocean's 14 did have a gun that he could have shot Paul Blart with, unless he knew he can't be killed. And if that's the case, that this is the only way you have of injuring the eternal Paul Blart.
A further wrinkle, Lane, the detainee at the hotel,
also can't be killed.
Do we ever see one? Is it ever referenced that Maya has something oatmeal-y before this moment? Or was it just introduced right in that second? This isn't my question, but this just occurred to me.
Introduced.
Okay.
It's not known that she carries oatmeal moisturizer.
It's okay, you guys. It's not. There's a close-up of it, and it says oatmeal concealer. So the big Deus Ex Machina that saves the day is Vincent's oatmeal allergy.
There is no battle damage on Eduardo as he befriends Paul Blart in the denouement of this scene. Also, in that final confrontation, he gets shot in the fucking spine, and in the next scene, he's totally okay.
By the end, she's calling him mi amor, which is my love. When he gives her this speech about listen, it's not me. You're kind of caught up in this thing. Because he says to her, that guy over there, the actual, everyday dude who's, heroic, that's the guy you want. Apparently, I can only be heroic every 6 years because I was not heroic for the first 45 minutes of this movie, and I was only heroic for the last half hour, and now I won't be able to be heroic again for 6 years. And it's this weird kind of moment of oh, okay, you're not actually in love with me. You just kind of got caught up in the moment. You should go over and be with him.
The final one is when he references the good security guy at the hotel and says, you should be with him. Oh, he's full on crying. And it cuts back and he's just bawling.
Oh my God.
I laughed pretty hard at that.
Leading all the way to his triumphant victory as he's receiving his accolades from the hotel staff. And then one of the last scenes in Vegas is him, telling Davina, I'm not right for you. Eduardo loves you. He's over there crying as, again, this triumphant song Eclipse is playing in the background. The hero's journey is over, and he's being very honorable about his victory.
Paul Blart has moved to California with Maya. In the conversation with Maya about her going to UCLA and then being apart and her leaving, he then says, and anyway, as like in response to them being separated, and then shows her the huge check Mr. Wynn has given him. He has moved there. He has given up his job at the Orange County Mall or whatever to move to Los Angeles with her.
How's this for interesting? Later, when he sends his daughter off to college, I teared up.
And he meets and instantly falls in love with a shade-wearing cop on a horse at the end, and they fall in love with each other instantly.
He gets kicked by a horse into a van.
On that note, the last song we hear in the movie is "Breathe in the Air Again," which is this really kind of slow, melancholy song. It's the song that underscores the beginning of the movie when all this terrible shit is happening to him. And while it might not seem like that matches the end, because he meets the mounted police officer and she gives him her number, and then he gets kicked very hard by a horse with some bad CGI tone. Because at the end of the day, he's still like, while he may have saved the day, the problems that existed in Paul Blart's life at the beginning of the movie are definitely still present at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, he's still a very lonely, maybe even delusional person. And this lack of resolution that you get from Breathe in the Air is like, it really makes you think like, wow, is he really better off than he was in frame one? I don't think so.
By the way, I just want to read out, I thought this was very funny when the email came through. I just want to read this out. This was Griffin's description of his viewing experience before we did the podcast. I took a screen grab of it, Griff, because I thought it was so funny. Just FYI, I had food poisoning all day and watched the movie in the middle of a diarrhea fever dream. Highly recommended viewing experience.
And now, Griffin, give us that famous sign-off line that you do every episode.
Not today, Death!